It's okay. That clock still says,
Almost done. Oh, it's after.
that's all right.
Oh, no. Okay. I made it. No?
You made it.
No. I'm too old to be running.
It is now 6:30 PM. The Heritage Preservation Board is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Milford,
Present.
Mr. Sprecher,
Present.
Ms. Hallett,
Mr. President.
Ms. Ryan,
Here.
Mr. Mrzinski.
Here.
And now we'll move to the public comments. Do we have any public comments? No. And Pat, no one from the public sent in anything, or we we can move on to the next step?
Yes.
Okay.
And staff would like to ask for the minutes to be deferred to the next meeting. We have too many issues with these. We put them out a little too quick, so we'd ask that the minutes be deferred.
I don't have any objections to that. Does anyone else?
No.
No? Okay, then the approval of the minutes will carry over till next month's meeting. And then we'll have the quasi judicial announcement read and swearing in of any speakers.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Heritage Preservation Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening?
No, not me.
Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak this evening, if you could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So sworn.
Okay. Then we're going to move to application 21-12, which is 0 North Sanford Avenue on construction of a new single-family detached dwelling. Pat, you want to go ahead and make the presentation?
Yes. I'll be sharing my screen. All right, do we know the source of that feedback?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
I'm trying to figure out. Sorry, Mike. Okay, it's coming out of okay. All right, this is a proposal for a new residence on North Safford Avenue. This is proposed between Orange Street and Center Street. And this is proposed by Mr. Evan McConey, who some of you, I don't know if any of you were on the board, but Mr. McConey built 2 residences right around the corner on Orange Street that received certificates of approval in 2018 and were completed in 2019. This lot is about 4,000 square feet in size. Is a little infill lot in the city's smart special area plan. So in the Transect district, it gets 1 unit for that lot. So that's what the applicant is proposing to do here. And by the way, if you can see my pointer, those 2 vacant lots on this aerial are where the other two residences were built in 2019. Again, this is an infill lot. The home to the south is a contributing altered structure, and the home to the north is a non-historic, non-contributing structure. To the north, we have a single-family home that fronts on Center Street, and then there's a second smaller residence behind that one that accesses from Safford Avenue. And as far as the area itself, down on that northwest corner of Orange and Safford, we have, like I say, three contributing altered adjacent to the subject lot, and then two more contributing altered structures there going down to the corner. And then back here on Orange Street, we have the two new construction homes that went in 2019. This is just some of the project features. It's got 2 stories at the front and 1 in back. And then all these other features, I won't go through them, but basically the applicant is kind of taking advantage of the lot shape. It's a, excuse me, sorry. I ate supper too close to the meeting, sorry. It's a narrow and deep lot, so he's limited on how much width he can have to the house. So he's designed this to kind of take advantage of the physical nature of the lot. These are just highlighting the your review standards that are most applicable to this project. You'll notice that the format of the staff report has changed a little bit, and I'm going to keep kind of incorporating a little bit of change and update to all your processes with the new guidelines having been adopted, which we'll talk about later. One of those is to kind of point out some of the guidelines that would be especially applicable to each project. So I've listed those in your staff report. This kind of shows the lot, the adjacent structure next door. Like I say, that's a contributing altered in the district. This is the vacant lot between. You can see to the north is that kind of secondary or almost accessory structure behind the main structure on Center Street. Across the street, you've got Cocolectus Construction Building. It's got that high, like a portico style porch there. And then views up and down Safford. Of course, this is right on the Pinellas Trail. Just to kind of illustrate, I didn't really have a schematic of the height of this with the other structures in place. The structure to the south is probably about 23 feet from grade using Google Earth to measure. The new structures and the proposed structure that you're looking at tonight are going to be about 35 or less. And the applicant may be able to talk about that a little more. But we're probably looking at something close to the height of the new structures back behind these that are visible from Safford Avenue. The applicant has stated that a lot of the materials, pretty much the materials being used, will be similar to those approved on the structures on Orange Street. So I put some visuals of those up here. There's maybe a couple of things you might want to key in on. One is the mix of materials for the exterior kind of building covering, which includes the hardy board, lap siding, and the stucco. I believe on this one, and the applicant can confirm, we're looking at the lap siding really for that 2-story structure up front and around that that whole second story. And then the stucco would be for that first floor going back to the back of the lot and not nearly as visible, really, even as these are, since they'll be between two properties and it's a pretty narrow lot. As for the rest of the materials, just see the typical windows and doors, that we have there. The railing, I believe the applicant has said will be wood. Some of the, the rest of this is the cement board, the paneling. On these, we have like a shake shingle in the gable here. And then vinyl or those types of materials for the posts. The porch, this porch has a brick floor, and these properties have brick that they use for the walkways and porch floor. And I guess I didn't get a picture of the driveway. The applicant used basically the paving only in the area of that the vehicle wheels would be going on. There's probably a name for that. So that was a design where they reduced the amount of paving needed. The porch this porch has a wood ceiling, or at least it looks like wood. So those are things you can ask the applicant about. But basically, he stated that this home would be similar to those. And this is a couple of the elevation views. We're looking at a metal roof, again, similar to those other structures. Overall, it kind of borrows from the frame vernacular style. It's using kind of lines and fenestration and simple ornament to almost no ornamentation, kind of similar to a frame vernacular. The applicant does not have the option of putting the garage, or at least it would be very tough to put a garage behind this one like he did on the others, because the lot width just isn't sufficient. So there will be a garage fronting the Safford Avenue. There's no alley access or anything. And so there's like a paneled garage door, and it's set back a little bit, I think, from like the porch, a gabled porch. So hopefully it's a little bit subordinated to the rest of the overall design. And then this shows the back and the north side towards Center Street. I don't think there was anything else. As far as setback lines, the setback proposed is 15 feet, which is maximum for this district. And it lines up pretty well with the other properties, especially the one to the south on this street. And the rest of the project appears to comply with the Transit Code standards, the setbacks, parking, driveway widths, landscaping, those types of things. And the public was noticed. We didn't receive any responses on this, so I'll be glad to answer any questions, but staff is recommending approval of the project. And again, the board may wish to confirm some of the design and materials with the applicant, but we're recommending approval at this time. Are there any questions?
Pat, on the roof heights, because I was one of the members that voted on the other one that ended up being such an eyesore in the city, I want to make sure that that's still not going to be the effect here on this. And it looked like it was okay, and it's not going to outshine everybody else's property in the area. It's going to conform to what is there
No.
in height.
Yeah, I'm not sure what property you're talking about that is the eyesore.
It was one that I voted on a long time ago, and a lot of the neighbors complained about it. It was a neighborhood not in a mixed use. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what your drawing showed.
Okay.
It looks like it conforms to all the other roof heights, and it's not going to stand higher than anyone else's property in here?
This one
Or-
will stand a little bit higher than the adjacent ones. So what you're looking at, at least on that side of the street, Kokalakis portico, the top of that's about 30 feet up
Okay,
from Google, looking at Google Earth. This house that is in the picture here that's up there now, I'm guessing 23 feet or so, and it really is kind of a vertical, you know, it doesn't bother me as much because it's kind of a vertical, conveys a vertical feeling or structure. It's not, you know, and like I say, you can see the other houses from Safford that are up to the 2-story level. There's such a mix of items here. And we can ask the applicant, I don't think this is in a flood zone, or if it is, I don't think that's really the issue. It's really more getting a reasonable size house on this property. And it's an infill property, and we think, you know, in the context of the neighborhood, and just being kind of in an area of mixed, not only buildings but uses. So you've got offices. It's in a transect that's called residential retail office, and it's got kind of a mix of uses. So
So
we
it's got
felt
a
like
really
because this
conform
is a
in the area.
prominent single family right up on the street, that it won't be interfering with the
Thank you.
character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question. So do we have a site plan? Because I think I know where you're going. You're talking about the massing of it and how it's going to dwarf the two properties on,
Yes,
on the side.
exactly.
I just didn't know, like, is this house pulled closer to the street than the adjacent properties? Is it pushed back further on the lot than the adjacent properties? Just how much space is really going to be there?
Yeah, I measured on Google Earth, the setback for the house to the south, and that's about 16 on there. So I'm guessing it's about 16 or 15. The line of the house to the north, the main house that corners on Center Street, is also about 15. Now, there is a smaller kind of accessory house behind that that's pushed way back, and it's pretty low. It's like, I think it's got a flat roof. Might be able to see it in here. That to me wasn't really so much a primary structure. This little thing, it's like a cottage, basically. The main house is to the east of that. I should have had that in the picture, but that's about 15 feet. So are the houses south of this clip gable roof house. Those are all right up about 15 or closer. So this will be consistent with those setbacks.
Will you be able to get this is just me gauging for space. Could you get a car parked in the driveway in front of it, or is it gonna not deep enough?
Well, you'll have the garage, and I should say that 15 is the maximum setback for this transact.
Okay. Or is 15 feet?
But the applicant could speak to that, I guess. Yes. Go
I have a
ahead.
question. And it's, we're still talking about the same thing here. In the guideline number 30,
Mhm.
it talks about new construction matching height of the buildings that are close by. And although I don't really have a problem with this, I just want to make sure we all understand that the height of the new building is proposed to be 35 or so, and you said 23 or so with the house next door. So that's about, what, a 12-foot
Different.
Mhm.
So that's
To
like
the peak,
from me to you.
yeah.
So that could be substantial. I mean, you could consider that a whole story.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to make sure we understood that. Because this guideline number 30 also talks about having the lower part of the house in the front and the higher part in the back, which is just the opposite of what we've got here.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I just want to make sure I bring this up. And then the other thing was about the setbacks. So you're saying that the little kind of pink house is about 15 feet back also?
No, the main house that it's behind. So, like I say, it's not in the picture. Just to the right of that in the picture is the main house on that property.
Yeah, I'm talking about the house on the north side.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's basically a cottage behind a there's two residences on that property.
Oh, I see.
The main one fronts on Centers.
The one on the other side, on the south side,
That's about, I measured 16 feet from
16.
the property line, yeah.
Right, well, that's certainly close enough. I guess really the only concern that I wanted to bring up was that
The
height
height.
difference
Mhm.
between the two, because it's really a small lot, and that house
is
is
small.
going to be really, but I see it's for sale. I saw a for sale sign on it. So maybe you're going to buy it and tear it down, I don't know. But I just wanted to bring that up. Like I said, I don't know that I have a problem with it. I do realize in a use like this with so many different houses, you have to sort of
Mhm.
decide and give a little here and take a little there, and I'm certainly willing to do that. Again, I just wanted to bring that up.
And to the visual of which house is set back further or closer also gives the visual of whether it's taller or not too. So that can affect what you think you see, I guess you'd say, how you perceive it. Okay, does anyone else have a question or comment on that?
Can I ask a question of the applicant?
Yes.
Evan, did you guys look at possibly reversing the volume, doing the second story in the back versus the front? I know why you did it. It looks beautiful. But it is going to dwarf the two structures on the other side. Just asking if you guys looked at it.
Could you please state your name for the record
Evan McConey,
and the address?
4114 Woodlands Parkway,
Okay,
Suite
thank you.
401, Palm Harbor.
Okay, and go ahead and answer her question.
I hadn't looked at it, the reverse. We had the other two approved on Orange Street and people liked them. I didn't get any negative feedback.
No, they're beautiful.
So that's just what we went with.
I just think, like, because if you think of the two new ones, the one that's adjacent to the really small house, that's kind of the look we're gonna get when this one goes in. And again, it'll be beautiful and it's beautiful, nicer than what's there. So just trying to understand though that we are gonna dwarf those two adjacent homes.
Those are one story though.
Yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah. And
One
know
thing I
that-
do want to mention as well is you were asking about the setback. I'm going to try to push that back as far as I can. So that doesn't show it being back as far. So I'm trying to push it back farther so I can get, a good sized driveway for a car.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Parking, where are people going to park if you have more than one or two cars?
Well, there's a 2-car garage there and a spot in the driveway.
There is, okay.
Not if urban or street parking, I guess.
Would you repeat that, please?
It's urban anyway, so your street parking, a lot of people do it today.
Yeah.
And I've got the slide up that shows the site plan, if that helps.
Yes. So my question is, you said you're going to try and push it back further?
Mhm.
Is that something that's already in this proposal, that it'll be pushed back?
Well, the slide doesn't show it being pushed all the way back. But I think the slide, I don't know if it has a dimension on from the property line to the front porch, but I think I can get it back a few more feet than that.
Yeah, we're only talking a couple feet.
Okay.
5 maybe.
Yeah.
Would this application have to be changed to push it back? Or can it be voted and approved on like this with, I don't understand how to do that.
Well, that's going to be based on your design guidelines, so y'all are not like necessarily approving a site plan or setbacks or anything like that. It's just going to be the aesthetics and making sure that it's in harmony with the historic district per your guidelines. So that, if that's something that you think is going to substantially change the look of the house being in the historic district, then maybe that's something you might want to condition. But if not, then that's something that will go through permitting through the building process.
Okay. I personally don't know how I would be able to judge whether or not it would affect the historic look of it. I don't know how I would do that.
I think that kind of
Any
answers
kind
your
of
question a
any
little
kind of
bit.
Pushback, the further you get it away from the road, the perception of it being smaller is going to be
Yes,
better.
yes.
Okay, so that's in a positive direction. So if it goes a few feet, that can help.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for the applicant? Would the applicant like to say,
Not to the applicant, but just some clarification on setback, and I know that's not really what we're dealing with, but we did bring it up. Pat, you mentioned a couple times 15 feet maximum. Did you mean minimum?
No,
So it can't be further back than 15 feet?
not unless we somehow vary it, which if that is the wish of this board, I believe the applicant could request a variance based on historic design they would probably have to do that. I didn't pick up my transit code, but I don't think we can do that by warrant. I think they'd need a variance.
Okay.
But,
But what we could do is just say we are not against that, something like that.
say it again, please.
What we can say is if he pushes back, of course, he's going to have to get a variance. But the historical board would be receptive to that. They wouldn't be against a move like that.
Right.
Am I right?
Yes.
yes, the Board of Adjustment can consider historic, this board's actions and requirements, I guess,
But it
in
wouldn't
their
have to come
decision.
back to us again.
No.
No.
Any other comments from the board, questions from the board? Would the applicant like to say anything about the project?
Just here to answer questions.
Okay. All right. Do we entertain a motion?
Yes, I motion that
I would just request that you ask, for the record, any members of the public wishing to, understanding there's no one in the room, but just in case, and for the record purposes, just to make sure we cover that.
Okay. So is there any public comments about this? Okay, there's no public comments. Does anyone entertain a motion on this?
I make a motion that we accept the application of 2112 for approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Mrozinski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Hallett,
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher,
Yes.
Ms. Milford.
Yes. Motion is approved for application 2112. Please make sure you follow the process and get your permits. And if you have any questions, contact Pat and they'll help you through that process. Now we're moving on to application 2020-10, Land Development Code Amendment, Ordinance 2020-39. Pat, would you like to make that presentation?
Yes, and I'll share my screen again. Okay, this is a proposed change to our sign code. The Board of Commissioners reviewed this on first reading, I believe it was on January 26th. After they reviewed it, before going to second reading, they wanted this board to take a look at it. This is basically to do a couple of things. One is to incentivize, the main thing is to incentivize better sign design. And then there were some sign types that weren't previously allowed that are clarified. And then the other thing it does is create a mechanism for what are called landmark sign designations. So what it does is it adds to the code some graphic illustrations, and you see some of those here on the slide that illustrate the sign types that are more desirable. It provides incentives for those sign types. That section of the change, and of course, the entire sign code or article from our code is in your packet. But if you look at the numbered page 32, that's where those changes start. So we would be inserting illustrations that show kind of the designs of signs that the city's looking for. The main incentives would be to encourage these types of signs would be taller signs and larger signs, 25% increase. In the historic district, that amounts to your height limit in the historic district is 10 feet. So you're looking at 12 and a half feet for the 25% increase, and then more sign face. So if you look at the illustrations, basically the idea is to discourage the pole signs there at the bottom and to encourage more monument signs and more attractive freestanding and elevated signs. There's also graphics added to clarify the sign types that you see illustrated here, the wall signs and different ones that you guys see. These are more graphics added for clarity for roof signs, which currently are prohibited altogether. This would allow some roof signs, as long as they don't project above the roof, like this one in the lower right-hand corner does. So this would allow some of those roof signs. And again, the incentive would be to do these signs would be an increase in height and or sign area of 25%. On that, as you know, all signs in the historic district come before you, whether regardless of the status of the building or the property. So you would be seeing you see all the signs in the historic district. So that's why the Board of Commissioners wanted you to take a look at this. The other thing that's been added is this idea of a landmark sign. We really don't have protection right now in our sign code from a non-conforming sign being required to be removed. That's a sign that people feel is either historic or culturally significant, say, to the neighborhood. Might be a couple signs down on the docks, for example, that people feel are kind of iconic or whatever. This was added to provide a way to designate those and allow them to continue. This proposal is that all those applications for landmark signs or proposals for landmark signs, regardless of where they are in the city, would come before you first for a recommendation, then go to the Board of Commissioners.
Oh,
So,
Rhonda, excuse me 1 second. All the signs, even outside the historical district, will come through us?
if they're proposed as a landmark sign, and I'll give you an example. People think, well, I've heard people say that I don't know if it's a Centurion or what it is on the Hill House restaurant. That's an example of something that really is not covered in our sign code. That would be an example. I don't know that there's a whole lot of those around the city. But yeah, those, if someone proposes that to be a landmark sign or something like that, and it meets the criteria, then you would review it for those criteria and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and they would review it and designate it as a landmark sign if they feel it meets the criteria.
And the Board of Commissioners is the ones that will make that final decision to accept it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the changes to the sign code that are proposed.
Any questions, comments from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Specifically about the creative sign allowance, the 25% larger.
Mhm.
Who's going to decide what the definition of creative is? And who's going to be that creative, who's going to decide if it's creative or not?
That will be, and that has been asked, that will be planning and zoning will decide if it meets these. Looking on numbered page 36 under section 189. Substantial aesthetic improvement, positive visual impact, unique design, high degree of thoughtfulness, imagination, inventiveness, strong graphic character. We're going to have to review that and make a determination. So it'll be, if this is adopted, it'll be something we'll have to work through, see how it works and go from there. It's a subjective,
Okay.
standard. So
Okay,
that's why the illustrations were added, to give people an idea of what would theoretically meet these criteria.
Okay, but what you're saying is the historical review board, we are going to be making these decisions on signs outside of the district in all parts of it.
No, that's only to designate a landmark sign. That was a separate section I went to. So signs that people put up, new signs, replacement signs, by and large, the sign permit applications we get in the city, you review everything that's in the historic district. So that'll be 90% of what we get. But if anybody ever wants to designate a landmark sign anywhere, that would come to you. I can think of maybe 3 examples right now in my head of what might be a landmark sign in town. I really don't. Yeah, good example, when we bulldozed the Sun Bay, we took that sign, it had a big arrow and neon. That might have been a landmark sign. The city was able to sell that for a few $100s. Somebody wanted it because it was from, I don't know, the 50s or 60s. Something like that, something like like I say, down on the docks, but I can't think of more than.
Okay, so we're designating a landmark as an old sign essentially, whether we're
Yeah,
going to keep it or not.
the criteria says,
Fit any other category or
Okay, so-
something?
Like
Yeah.
an
But
icon.
I'm
yeah,
just,
it's got to
okay.
be at least 30 years old.
Okay.
I didn't go through those one by one. I probably should have, but we can put that back up if you
Okay.
want to see that.
I didn't catch that. Oh, okay, I got it now. So we wouldn't be doing any essentially new signs unless it was within a district.
That's correct.
Okay,
Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
How does this affect old signs? There are some businesses that have hand painted or hand done signs. Would they be affected by that? Or does this start going forward?
If a sign is, I'm not sure how to answer your question. So if this is adopted, this will affect everything going forward, that anybody who applies to replace their sign or put a new sign in, and these are basically incentivized signs, so they don't have to do this.
Okay, so you're saying that the older ones are grandfathered in and they don't
Oh, sure.
necessarily have to.
Yeah, it's
apply
just
to
like
that.
any of your codes you adopt,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything non-conforming is legally non-conforming.
Just going a little further. Okay, we have a sign that we say is a monument sign. And it's for a hotel, and a hotel, like you're talking about, the one down at the Front Spring Bayou, they tear it down. The sign would go with it, wouldn't it? if they get rid of it? Or would they hold the sign? I'm just, it's got me a little baffled here.
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't use that example, but I think, the owner would still own the sign. The idea with designating a landmark sign is, if someone wanted to keep the sign and repair it, and it's non-conforming, and they have to repair, say, more than 50%,
okay.
in which case it would normally cause the city to say, hey, you've got to take that down and put up a sign that conforms with code. The landmark designation would protect them from losing
The
this,
old sign.
the sign.
Okay. So that's mainly, I see what they're doing now. Yeah, makes sense.
Any other questions or comments? Okay,
Well, what action do we have to take on this? Do we approve it or?
we're gonna have to make a motion to approve or deny. Do we have a motion to?
Well, I actually think the Board of Commissioners on this is just asking for your input and review.
Okay, so do
Um,
we need to provide some kind of feedback to them?
If you want
You
to,
want to,
if there's something that you'd like to see added, or if you think this meets, is fine, or if you have some concerns about something, I would voice those now so that Pat can take that back to the Board of Commissioners and the Planning and Zoning Board when they review this to recommend adoption and ultimately go to the Board of Commissioners to be adopted or not.
In my opinion, they did a really good job with this, and I would recommend they go ahead and approve it, but that's my comments. I want to hear what everybody else feels.
I'm still getting hung up on a monument sign, the monument part of it. What if the owner of the business said, hey, I need to get another sign, a new sign? He just wants to get rid of it altogether, like a demolition or something like this.
So you want more clarification from the
Well, I'm
board?
just
you
wondering,
recommend?
because we ran into these problems with buildings in the district
Yeah.
where they just neglect them
Yes,
and you wind up having to destroy it.
right.
Okay, if it's a sign that needs to be protected, let's say, is there any provisions for the city to protect it from something like that?
That's the landmark, right?
Yes.
But what provisions will protect it?
As currently proposed, it's not really presented as a mechanism to
Protect,
preserve and protect the sign. In that vein, it's really to give an owner the ability to keep the sign in the city. So if the board would like to express some concern over that to the Board of Commissioners, I'll be glad to take that to them if that's a question that the board.
this is, well, I can see what you're saying now. This is essentially to protect the owner, so he can keep a sign that's been in his family, let's say, for generations.
Yeah.
Okay. Understand.
Anyone else? So we have recommendation for the BOC of any way what do y'all want to recommend here?
No, it's just be a little bit more clear on, the rights of the owner and the rights of the city as far as a monument sign goes.
He wants more clarification. Did you get that, Pat?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So
Yeah,
she
I
can
got
turn it over to the board
Okay.
commissioners.
And
Just clarify. that a
for
little bit.
clarification, when you say monument sign, you referring to the landmark
Yeah.
signs or the actual monument style sign?
Oh, we're talking of the older signs.
The landmark,
older
okay, the landmark
signs.
signs, okay.
Yeah,
That's the ones I'm talking about, yeah. Historical.
that's a good idea. It's a really good idea. Anybody else? Okay, then let's move on to Historical District Design Review Guidelines Manual, addition of the following to, let's see, it's Resolution 2010-02 and Resolution 2021-03. And Pat, do you want to read over that? What do we need to do here?
Yes, so I'm very pleased to tell you, and maybe you watched, the Board of Commissioners did adopt the guidelines, your guidelines document on February the 9th. They were very happy with it. They were very complimentary of this board and the guidelines. So congratulations on that. And you all reviewed that resolution before, so you know that the mechanism going forward is if we want to make any changes to that document, this board can make any changes to that document by itself, with the exception of Chapter 4, the actual guidelines. Any changes you make to that chapter go to the Board of Commissioners. Tonight, I'm asking to add 2 resolutions to the appendices in the document. The first is the resolution that adopted your local district, and the second is the resolution that adopts these guidelines.
Okay, now then, because it's not like the application, do we vote on this to accept what they add, or how do I handle this? This goes to the city attorney. What's the best way to do this?
Well, it would yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can do it by a voice vote of consensus, or you can do it by a roll call vote with a properly made motion. It can go either way,
Okay.
however the chair chooses to do so.
Okay, let's do it by
Roll call.
roll call, and we'll do it first, resolution 2010-02. We'll need a motion.
Well,
and a
it
roll
would just
call.
be to amend
The
Appendix J.
guidelines.
Yeah,
Pardon?
the guidelines to add to Appendix J, so.
Yes. So does anyone make a motion to add that to the appendix F? Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And we have roll call.
Mr. Rosinski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Hallett,
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher,
Yes.
Ms. Milford.
Yes. So passed. And all right, do we have a motion on, to add resolution 2021-03, adopting the February 2021 Historic District Design Review Guidelines Manual? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2021-03.
Well, I think someone already made a motion
did
to
it.
revise Appendix J. Appendix J was being revised to change the title and add those 2 ordinances to the appendix. So just the motion to revise Appendix J is inclusive of those 2
I
ordinances.
don't see J on my,
There's Appendix F on here.
Independent.
oh, it's F.
Appendix F.
Is it
That's
F?
correct.
F, and that's
Sorry.
what
I
the
don't
motion
see-
I'm
was
looking
F.
at the following
Okay.
resolution, copies attached to Appendix J.
Okay.
I pulled this off of the city's website.
Yeah, I know, and I see mistakes in that. So
Okay, so then
sorry about that.
Yeah.
Let me
It was
figure
for
out what I
F.
did.
Say it again, please.
Then that's fine. The motion was for F. I'm sorry, I'm looking at an agenda that was posted to the city's website. Apparently it's incorrect. So the
Okay.
motion that was made to amend Appendix F to include those 2 ordinances is fine.
Okay,
That's the only thing that needed to be made.
okay.
You don't need to adopt those individually.
Okay, so it's now, both of them in that one vote, we're fine.
Right, because the only motion that needed to be made is to revise the appendix as a whole.
Okay. Let's,
Okay, but that wasn't the motion that was made. The motion that was made was just for the first one.
I understood the motion to be revising the appendix as stated.
well, we did it as A, and then we were going on to B, but we could amend that to just accept both A and B.
Well, if you've already, and I apologize, my understanding was that the motion was to amend because there are 3 requests technically. It's to revise the title of the appendix and to add the following resolutions.
Okay, well, I missed.
So I would just ask who made the initial, I mean, it's already been voted on. So to clarify for the motion, whoever made the motion to amend their motion just to revise it for a clerical error, just as stated in the staff report.
Okay,
Okay, what she said.
And then
Who made the
whoever
mo-
seconded it, if they could second that
You made
revision.
the motion,
Yeah,
ma'am.
and I
Did you
just
make the
amended
motion?
it,
Okay.
And you seconded, I think.
Yeah, I
Sabrina.
second it. I go along with you.
Okay, and then if we could just do the roll call vote again, and that
Okay.
will take the place of the initial
Perfect.
motion.
Mr. Mrozinski.
Yes.
Miss Ryan,
Yes.
Miss Hallett,
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher,
Yes.
Miss Milford.
Yes, and I still apologize for the confusion.
Wow.
That's all right.
Do we have any staff comments?
No, and that was my fault. I will try to be, maybe make this process a little clearer going forward, so.
It's okay, Pat. I kind of get confused sometimes, and I think I contributed to that. Does the board have any comments?
Okay, I just have another question for clarification. On the first applicant, we approved it, that's great. The applicant mentioned that he may want to move it back. Then we had that little discussion about he may have to get a variance. We sort of said here that we would have no problem with that, but that was not in the motion.
No, it
Does
wasn't.
it need to be, or do you just need us to say that it's okay with us? Because we didn't actually specifically say that.
So for, and I'll let Pat add whatever she would like to, but from a legal perspective, you weren't asked to do that. You can make a condition on it. That's not necessarily something that was a condition to the motion.
No.
So I think if the applicant does need to appear before the variance board, then he can certainly say, I mean, it's going to show this application has been before the Historic Preservation Board. It's not needed for this particular thing. And then staff can add, if there was a consensus to that, they didn't have a problem with
I wanted to
it.
make sure we said, so Pat could do that.
Yeah, and in all honesty, for that type of a variance, I'm not so sure how much weight that would carry anyways, because they have, just like you do, they have theirs are very specific criteria that they have to follow.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of wiggle room like with your guidelines, so it can be made note of, but I also advise that board, and I would likely tell them it doesn't really make a difference, so sorry.
I just thought it would make things a little easier for the applicant if he were to.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that when you all make motions, you can make a motion, as an individual, you can make a motion and contain whatever caveats are reasonable to the application. And then if the board feels a certain way, you can add those comments in there. Whether or not, they are going to carry legal weight is going to depend on the situation, so. I don't know if that was helpful at all.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, now we're going to go to the board comments, and I have a couple of things I want to say. I want to thank you all. I think this is a great board, and we really care about the historic district. And we ask, and I just hope that you will continue to ask applicants all the questions you need to know, and look at the guidelines and continue on throughout the process. I am going to officially resign tonight as the chair because I am selling my home. And I'm not sure yet where we're moving, but I think it's going to be North Florida. So I have enjoyed being a part of this board. It's been a pleasure. And I really value each one of your opinions. And I just encourage you not to be afraid to ask questions, to have Pat or the attorneys correct anything, because that's how we learn. If we ask the wrong question or word it wrong, they will help you along the way. And that's what I just encourage you to continue to protect these properties. The destruction of the properties that I've seen and others have seen by neglect is a huge thing. And I'd like to see that stopped. And when you ask an applicant, you've owned the property this many years, what have you done in that many years? And they say, nothing, we're waiting to see if we could get funds. That is a clear demolition by neglect. I mean, you've owned it more than 5 years and you have not done anything to do it. And then later in the discussion, it comes up and there's a comment that when they originally bought it, they had plans for something else to be there, and they just let this waste away. So now there's nothing left to save and it has to be torn down. And they get what they originally wanted the property to be. So I encourage you to ask as many questions as you can, because it's up to this board to do something about this kind of thing. And I appreciate everyone here has a different point of view on things, and some of us have more expertise on things than others. And I appreciate you. And I just want to say that I will do a formal written resignation if that's what is required. I will do that. Pat, do you need one?
I don't think so. You're on the record. You're at the meeting.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
that's all I got to say about that. So, thank you.
We'll miss you.
So it will be effective immediately. We're supposed to close the end of March, and we're looking for a property in North Florida. And I don't want to take the chance that maybe I'll move before your next meeting. So I don't know whether at this point you need to consider a new chair here tonight and vote on that, or what do you think?
We can have the vice chair step up as chair for the next meeting.
And that's
Sounds good.
Bill. Okay, so now it is 7:26 and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Did it take you long to sell the house?
It took 2 days to sell the house. It took 2 days.